Well, welcome back again to Restart. I'm sorry about that. Just a few couple of technical glitches there. But hey, don't we all know in business that it happens to us all? So I would like to welcome again the wonderful, very energizing and inspiring Ian Haycon. It has without doubt been a year unlike any other. I don't need to tell you that. Just look at the fact that we're bringing this festival virtually. While many of you are working from home or from shops and offices, which look very different to just a few months ago, our lives have been pretty much turned upside down. So, staying energized and focused as a business leader hasn't always been easy. But we know that self-care is hugely important to make sure you can deliver day in and day out. So let's welcome our first speaker, Ian Haycon, who will look at the new world, new you, and how to stay energized in challenging times. Over to Ian.
Thank you, Siobhan. Yes, so I did start a minute ago before the technical glitch, so I'm going to start my whole presentation again. So if you did catch the first few moments, then please bear with. So this is the title of the presentation, as Siobhan said, New World, New Energizing Challenging Times. As Siobhan said, it's been very challenging times for us all. And staying on top of our own energy and our own well-being has sometimes been very difficult, hasn't it? Because we've been, especially if we're in a leadership role in the business, we've been having to put the business first, and sometimes we take our own back seat in that. So today I want you to focus on yourself and how you can optimize your own energy to be a better leader, etc. So sorry, my clicker's just gone to sleep. So what I'd like you to do, if you're able to, is stand up for the duration of my presentation, because we're going to be a bit more energized that way. I appreciate I can't see you in this medium, but if you haven't got any medical reasons why you can't stand up, then please can you stay stood up for the remainder of my talk, which is going to be about another 25 minutes or so. So I'm going to cover today why we should stay energized, why energy is important to us, what to focus on, how to make that change stick, and then I'll just conclude. Hope that sounds okay. I love this quote from Bill Bryson. I'm not going to read the whole thing out, but basically what he's saying there, we have enough innate energy within us to explode 30 hydrogen bombs. So if we can just harness that energy for our greater good to take ourselves forward, we're going to be even more successful than perhaps we were before. Now, I'd just like you to reflect on this question. Unfortunately, you can put an answer to this in the chat console, but I can't see it. I can't see it until after my presentation is finished. But by all means, put it in so I can have a look at what you wrote. But what's the one thing in your business you have the most influence over? Now, you may have worked out that that was a bit of a loaded question because I'm talking about your personal energy. But you may have also, your immediate thought might have been the functional role that you perform in the organization. Perhaps you're the finance director, so you'd be thinking about numbers and money. Perhaps you're the sales director or sales manager, and so you're thinking about getting more business into the doors. But actually, the biggest thing you can influence is yourself. You've got the most control and influence over your own performance. And through that, you can have the most impact on the business. So why focus on energy? So here's just some of the reasons why energy is important to us. If you want to be that high performer, people don't often talk about high performers and low energy, do they? Being the best leader you can be, I mean, is relevant at any time, but particularly right now, if you can be that leader that is inspiring to others, that is taking your business forward, you're going to be the business that's most likely for this on top. You can be personally more productive, so you can get more stuff done in a day. Hopefully have more time to be there for your friends and your family. maybe they've had to take a bit of a backseat as you've been in crisis mode, and maybe we need to put that into balance, so our whole life's in balance. And then finally, but by no means least, be less likely to contract COVID-19 or other serious illnesses. In England, sadly, over 90% of the people that sadly lost their lives through COVID-19 had one or more underlying health conditions. Now, some of those health conditions will be unavoidable, your genetic lottery that we live in. But a lot of them we can either avoid through making the right health and well-being choices, or we can significantly reduce our risk of getting them. So now's the time to maybe press that reset button and start looking about this stuff and taking it a bit more seriously to protect and insulate ourselves for the future, not least to build our immune system to perhaps better protect us in the short run from whatever's going to happen with COVID as it sees itself out. And this links back to my personal journey, really. I was a successful CEO of a reasonably successful, famous Norfolk business, a business which I actually now own part of more recently. And I went on this journey. I went from couch potato to Team GB Ironman triathlete, which is really exciting, I know, but actually not the main message. The main message in that is I went on a journey about self-development and self-improvement. It just so happens that Ironman was the way I went eventually after a long time. But actually, I started to look after myself better across all aspects of my energy and well-being, a holistic approach to the way I looked after myself. And I showed up differently in that organization. People said I had more energy, we were getting more stuff done. And ultimately that business was more successful. And I think probably one of the reasons the owners of that business offered to sell me part of it late last year was probably because I was an Energise leader when I worked with them. That's probably part of that decision process. So that was my journey, but that led me to helping others like you on that same journey. And now there's a few of us at Energise Me. And we are fully digital. We've been fully digital for a couple of years. We're digital first. And we work with clients on an energy experience. So helping them not only understand what they need to do and how they need to do it, but making that stick. And I'll talk a bit about how we do that and how you can do that during this presentation. So let's talk about the what of energy. So we've got our triangle here of what we think makes great energy and what has worked consistently for people we've worked with over the last 6-7 years. So let's look at that. Spiritual energy, we've got physical energy, and we've got mental and emotional energy. So I'm going to break those down a little bit. So let's talk about spiritual energy first. Might sound a bit either religious or woo-woo, could be either of those things, but equally might not be. And we've used the word spiritual because I think it's the best description of what we mean here. But within spiritual energy, we would talk about your sense of purpose, what's important to you. People with a clear sense of purpose live longer and happier lives than people without. That's fact. That's just, evidential research. But I think right now, when we've been going through this experience, I don't know about you, but I certainly have challenged a lot of what my purpose was about as a result of reflections from COVID. So you know, there's changes afoot in us all, I think, and reflections from what's happened. So I'd urge you within the space of your personal purpose to just get a pen and paper out and start writing some things down if you haven't done so already about what you really want out of life and what's important to you, because that might help you propel yourself towards those things. Also within spiritual energy, we talk about social well-being. We are social beings. We came from tribes of hunter-gatherers, and that tribal connection was really important to us and a hard bake now into our DNA, this need to be social. And these recent events have driven a coach and horse us through that, haven't they? Yes, we've probably been a little bit more connected to our immediate friends, our immediate family and householders that we live with, But beyond that, our connections have been more distant, which has caused us to be a bit more lonely, and which is a real risk to our social well-being. So I'd urge you as a leader in your business, thinking it with your business hat on, to make sure you're doing all you can for yourself and the people that work for you and with you on social well-being agenda. What more could you do? You might be doing the monthly quiz night still on Zoom. You're probably still doing some Zoom or Teams meetings on a regular basis. But what can you do above and beyond that to make sure that social connection with your team is there? Because that's really important to them, particularly their relationship with their line manager. It's really important that we have that connection with them. So if you can, and we currently can under social distance restrictions, if you can formalize a physical face-to-face meeting, even under the restrictions that are there, then I'd urge you to look at how you can make that work for you and your organization, because it's going to reap dividends. The third thing we look at in this space is financial well-being. Now, you might say financial well-being, what's that doing in spiritual energy? That doesn't really fit. But we've put it in there because it's so closely linked to our purpose and delivery of our purpose. If we set out a set of goals and ideas about what we want to achieve in life, when obviously we need the financial means to get there. And again, COVID is a bit of a spotlight on it. One of the golden rules of short-term financial well-being is to have some money in the bank as a buffer in case things go wrong. The people that had done that but pre-COVID went through that experience in a lot more financially secure state than those of us that didn't. So take this opportunity to just look at your finances and see if they're in check, that kind of short, medium and long. Am I spending more than I earn? Have I planned for the immediate future, medium future, and am I planning for the end? And maybe it's time to get the spreadsheet out or have a chat with your financial advisor to just make sure your finances are in check, because they're a building block to everything else. If we haven't got the finances in check, we're not going to be able to necessarily deliver on all the other aspects. Although what I would say as a caveat is money and happipiness don't have a direct correlation as we go through. Once we earn more than about $75,000 in US currency, we don't get any happier. And in fact, we're not much happier after about 40,000. So a level of financial security is important to us, but money doesn't buy happiness. It just makes it a bit more comfortable along the way. So under physical energy, it's fairly obvious what might be in this section. First, I'd like you to think about what you eat and your focus on what you eat. We haven't got time for a nutrition lesson. I'm not a nutritionist anyway, and it would be pointless anyway, because I couldn't go over your unique needs in a session like this. But what is important to try and reconnect with right now is your relationship with food. If you look at the blue zone diets, there's the diets that where people live longer in certain areas of the world, like the Mediterranean diet, the Japanese diet. If you look at current health trends around things like paleo diets and veganism and all of these other things, underneath all that is a few basic rules that apply to all of those systems, which is that we freshly prepare our food, that we eat as little processed food that will contain high amounts of sugar and processed fats, and that we eat a high percentage of fruit and veg. And that's fundamentally the same rules, whatever system and dietary ideas and diet ideals that you might have. So if we bear that in mind, and if we're time poor, there are things like HelloFresh and organizations like that, I've got no affiliation with them, where you can get your freshly prepared meals pre-prepared so that you can crush the time. But just think about your relationship with food right now. Are you reaching for the wrong things at the wrong time? And could you make some small changes there to improve your relationship with food? Then we move on to movement. I've used the word movement, not exercise there. That's an important distinction to make, because it's about how much we move. Yes, I do lots of exercise and I've done lots of exercise. in a very structured way. But it's about, there's two things here that I want to get across in the importance of this in terms of getting this embedded in. We know that there's no silver bullet for health and well-being. We know that movement and exercise does give an endorphin release and give us an immediate boost in energy. It can go the other way if we do too much of it. But the two sort of golden rules that I'd like you to think about when you're thinking about moving more is firstly doing something you love. So let's take gardening, for instance. Perhaps as a child, you used to go up your grandparents' allotment with them and do some gardening. And now you live in a place where you haven't got a garden. So maybe looking into your own allotment and using that as an exercise regime would be a way to get exercise that we're doing something you love. The other thing I'd say is that take small steps. Don't decide overnight you're going to run a marathon and start running out the door and trying to run for 10 miles without any training, because you'll end up hurting yourself or quickly getting bored with it and stopping. So take small baby steps for improvement and work your way towards whatever it is you want to do, doing a little bit more each day. Next in physical energy, we have hydration. So I've got a glass of water here. I've always got a glass of water on standby for me to top up during the day. Out and about, which haven't been for a while, obviously, I always carry a sports cup full of water so that I can always make sure I'm hydrated. We need 6 to 8 cups of water, not pints, but cups, about half. That's about a cup, what's left there in there. According to the UK government. And I'd say, depending on what you're doing, you could probably healthily have a little bit more than that as well. But if we're not hydrated, that's going to have immediate impact. It's such an easy one just to make sure that we drink enough water. If we're not hydrated, it's going to have immediate impact on both our physical energy. We're going to feel more tired, but more importantly, looking at the other side of the triangle there, our mental and emotional energy. Cognitive impairment from lack of hydration. We're going to make bad decisions. We're perhaps going to be a bit more moody. We're going to lose concentration, etc. Our cognitive function will be impaired. So it's really easy just to focus on making sure we drink enough. And if you just tried that for the rest of today, making sure that you drank a little bit more than you've perhaps done in the past, if not drinking enough has been an issue in the past for you, then you'll see an immediate boost to your energy. Okay, sorry, my clicker does keep going to sleep because I'm on my phone. So the final aspect of physical energy is sleep. And again, if I had an interactive session here, I'd be asking you how much sleep you get a night. When I ask that question, I get anything from 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, through to 8, 9, sometimes even 10 hours coming through. But there's a cluster of around 5 to 6. There's a few people getting this 7 to 8. So according to Matthew Walker, who's one of the leading world eminent scientists in this space, the percentage of people that need less than the recommended kind of 8 hours sleep a night, when rounded to a whole number, is 0%. So if you think you've got the Maggie Thatcher gene, who famously didn't sleep much, then you're probably mistaken. You're probably in this category of people that are sleep deprived. And everything I just talked about hydration, when you're sleep deprived, you can take and multiply. All that cognitive impairment from sleep deprivation is going to be there. We have this buildup of a waste product called adenosine on the brain, and that doesn't go away unless we sleep it off. So that waste product's kind of there. You know that adage about boiling a frog. The frog doesn't know it's being boiled alive because the water's gradually getting hotter. And that's the same with this adenosine buildup. We don't realize our head is so foggy from this buildup because we've been living with it for a while. So getting a really good sleep regime is not only going to help our physical energy, we won't feel so tired, so we're more likely to get involved in physical activity and make the right food choices, etc. But it's also going to have a massive impact on our mental and emotional energy, which leads me through to mental and emotional energy. So what we find people to focus on here, I don't think you can see these from behind my name, but behind my picture. Oh, someone's moved me. That's good. Thank you, Andy. Is mindfulness. So our ability to be mindful. Now, you might think of meditation when I say the word mindful, and of course, meditation is a mindful practice. And you might also think that's a bit woo-woo. It isn't very woo-woo these days. There's a body of scientific evidence to support its efficacy, but also you just may not feel you have time and inclination to meditate. Excuse me. If you can give it a go, give it a go, but there's other ways to be mindful. The problem with these things is we are constantly on them. So what we used to call moments of boredom where we could be mindful, we fill them with what's ever on this device. So taking time away from these things, having these things tucked away in a drawer, is just a great way to be mindful. But that could be just going for a simple walk, walking around the block. Maybe you could structure your mid-morning, lunchtime and afternoon break, just have a 5-10 minute walk around the block without your mobile phone, focusing on all the sights and sounds that you can see, to just be mindful and present in that walk, and that will bring the brain, calm it down so that you'll be more productive in that next working session. If you're the sort of person that I've got ants in their pants, then mindfulness with movement is often a good idea. So things like yoga, qigong, tai chi, where there's movement involved with the mindful practice and the breathing, and then if you are that sort of person, you want to give that a try. I'm reaching for my pointer on my computer. Secondly, in this mental and emotional energy section, we talk about resilience, or we call it grit actually, and our ability to be resilient. If you think of resilience of like an elastic band, if we shove an elastic band in the drawer, when we go to get it out, chances are that's gone a bit all brittle and it'll snap because we haven't used it. Whereas if stretch it and keep stretching it, keep exercising it, it will get stronger. And that's a good analogy for resilience. The more we stretch that band, it gets stronger. Of course, if we stretch it too far and we snap it, then we've caused ourselves a big problem. So it's about keeping it exercised and keeping it stretched. And I think you can use right now as a real reflection on that. We've been through this really difficult time, but you're still here. You've had to make lots of decisions in probably personal life and business life to see you through this. So if you was to be reflective about that and just look at how resourceful you've been, maybe just journal each night what you've achieved during the day, what you've done to overcome this whole COVID pandemic. What you're going to be doing is training your brain to understand how resilient you really have been and how resourceful you've been. And that's going to make you even more resourceful as we see ourselves through this. So just that journaling in itself and, giving yourself a bit of a pat on the back for what you've done is going to build your resilience. And the final thing we talk about in this section is your effectiveness. Ironically, I've left it to last, but it's probably more often than not the first thing we talk to clients about. So how effective are you being right now? Are you bumbling through the day, or have you sort of got a clear structure in place, particularly if you're working from home still, and maybe you've got that bedded in now, maybe you've even thought about investing in a sit-stand desk and other things and making your home work environment a bit more workish rather than up the dining room table. How effective are you being? Are you doing the right things at the right time? Are you in a season when you've got the most energy to do the most important tasks? If you're the most energized at 9 o'clock in the morning, you should be really focused on the really important tasks at 9 o'clock in the morning, not necessarily trawling through your emails, which people tend to do when they first start for the day. So focus on how effective you can be, because if you're not being effective, it's going to cause stress and anxiety, but also you're never going to think about all this other stuff because you're not going to have time. So, and also in this area, probably one of the biggest things we talk to clients about is that ability to say no about things. When not to take something on is really important, because not doing it in the first place is the best way to keep it off your to-do list. So that's the what of what I believe you should be focused on and what we know works with the clients we've worked with. There's one more what, which is measurement. And I'll come back to this in the next slide in making it stick as well. And the great Peter Drucker said something like, what gets measured gets improved. There's various versions of that, of what was actually what he actually said, but that doesn't matter. What gets measured gets improved. So what measures can you put in place around the kind of things? So if you've written some things down from the last slide and what I've been talking about, that you're going to think, oh, actually, I'm going to do that, even if it's just drinking more water. You know, what does that look like for you? How much water would you like to drink per day? And can you measure that? You know, if you've got the sports cup that you know is the 750, how many sports cups are you going to drink in a day? And how many days are you going to maintain that for? Putting those kind of measures in place, be they about the actual results or be they about the way you feel about them, is going to help you maintain that focus on them and move forward. Which leads me on nicely to making it all stick, really. These are the things that we know work for people. These are the this is the way we've helped people embed this stuff in the past. The first thing we need to do to make it all stick is creating that time for self-reflection, having time to think about what we're going to change and implement that change. The next thing is, and this is probably the most important part of this slide in our experience, is to take baby steps. Don't try and can't get everything in one go. Don't look at the all the aspects that the 10 aspects that I've just talked about in that last couple of slides and try and make changes in all of them all at the same time. You will fail. So take baby steps. What can you make the most impact on first? Maybe it's just drinking a little bit more water to give yourself a little bit more energy to get yourself to the next thing. So take those baby steps. Set yourself some clear goals. I talked about what measures gets done, and I'm talking about that again in a moment in one of the other images here. But you know, what goals can you set yourself? You may think about weight loss as part of this. You may or may not. Weight loss is not the be all and end all of this stuff. This is about being a better you. It may include weight loss, it may not. But if you are going to include weight loss, how much do you want to lose and when by? You know, what sort of goals are you going to set yourself, and how are you going to reward yourself for that if you achieve that goal? The next one is accountability. Of course, you could speak to one of our great coaches about how we could hold you to account. But of course, that could be yourself. If you're very self-accountable, you can hold yourself to account. You can have a weekly meeting with yourself. I've got those in my diary, although I do have coaches as well. But I do have a weekly review meeting with myself to see how I've got on every week. But it could be, of course, it could be a coach, but it could be a colleague, could be your partner, could be one of your friends. Just someone that's going to just give a little nudge and see how you're getting on that journey. That's going to help you stay on track. Even just the notion of them being there, never mind what their interaction with you is going to help you stay on track. Going back to what I said earlier with Peter Drucker, make sure you're measuring and remeasuring, and that's why it's on this slide as well, is the fact that we're not just measuring once and saying, oh, this is where we are, this is our statistics, that we are on a regular basis just checking in with those measures again, whatever they may be, that are relevant to you, to say, how am I feeling, how am I doing, how am I progressing against what I want to achieve. Then the final one, which is hidden behind me, is to review. To review where our progress. And we've sort of got into one of those sort of quality control plan, do, check, act cycles, haven't we? We've been through the process. We review how we've got on, and then we start again, and we go through the process again. So that's how we make it stick. So I'm just going to wrap up and conclude. There is some time for questions and answers, but I'm not sure how that's going to work with Siobhan. So I'll check in with Siobhan when I conclude. So to conclude, remember the why. The why is to get more energy, and what your why might be behind that business success or personal success or a better time with family, etc. Understand and measure the what. So what is right for you? What specific things do you need to focus on? And within that, what specific strategies do you need to adopt to improve your energy? Understand the how and take small steps to improve, and be accountable for your actions. One final quote from Peter Drucker. Being a self-leader is to serve as chief, captain, president, or CEO of one's own life. I'd ask you this question. Are you being the CEO of your own life? Okay. I think we've got time for some questions. Hopefully we can jump back to Siobhan.
Wow, Ian, that was absolutely brilliant, as ever. You are inspiring. I feel energized just listening to you. I wish I could have got up in the studio and moved around a bit more. I think some key takeaways for me there is it's very interesting to talk about sleep regime, and we've got a question here about sleep. But what happens if you can't sleep? Our minds are working overtime right now. The energy sometimes isn't always as helpful as it could be. What's your advice for helping us get that really important sleep to clear those foggy heads?
Yeah, and it's a difficult one in that, because actually, and we've seen this in global statistics, sleep was disrupted, particularly in the early stages of COVID, because we were all worried about it and bring sleep problems. So, there's a lot here to cover in a quick question. But if you're having trouble staying asleep or getting to sleep, obviously there's a lot of stuff you can do upstream from that in terms of the way you prepare yourself for bed. So getting rid of that mobile phone and device out of the bedroom, not having that distraction, warm baths, these kind of things, and get ourselves into a relaxed state to be more ready for sleep. But then if we can't stay asleep, we need to find a strategy that works for ourselves. And my own personal strategy for staying asleep is an audio book of the Jungle Book that I've got as a free version on my Audible account. I've got an old phone in the bedroom. It's not I don't take my phone in the bedroom. I've got an old phone in the bedroom. It's only got Audible and a couple of other things on it. And I listen to this version of Jungle Book, but I've probably listened to 1,000 times. But for you, it might be getting up and doing something different. Sleep science say that if you can't stay asleep, then the best thing you do is get up, change the scenery, and then go back to bed, and then hopefully you might be able to get sleep. But also worry journals are a good way to deal with those thoughts that come up in the middle of the night, because then we've moved them from a kind of I'm worried about this to I've written that down so I can worry about that in the morning. So there's lots of things you can do, but it's an individual thing.
Brilliant. Some really brilliant advice there. How do people find you, Ian, if they want to get more top tips? Do you have a website?
Yeah, Energise.me, and we are currently relaunching the product and the offer. We did some COVID-specific work, to put some stuff out over COVID to help people, but we are in the process of relaunching our whole offer as a subscription model. So within the next 4 weeks, we'll be launching version 1 of that. So for a very low cost, people can subscribe to our offer and get help and support from us.
Brilliant. Well, there's loads of great advice there. Thank you so much for your time and, of course, energy today. And we wish you well. Yeah. Now, we're going to move on to our next guest. Thank you very much, Ian.